Voices in the dark. Finally, after what seemed like a forever of running, someone yelled, "I think we lost them." "Amos?" "I'm right here," said Amos's voice a few feet behind us. "We can stop," Miles yelled from farther up. "Jack!" I yelled. "Whoa," said Jack. "I'm here. I can't see a thing." "Are you sure we lost them?" Henry asked, letting go of my arm. That's when I realized that he'd been the one who was pulling me as we ran. "Yeah, shh, let's listen." We all got super quiet, listening for footsteps in the dark. All we could hear were the crickets and frogs and our own crazy panting. We were out of breath, stomachs hurting, bodies bent over our knees. "We lost them," said Henry. "Whoa, that was intense. What happened to the flashlight?" "I dropped it." "How did you guys know?" said Jack. "We saw them before. They looked like jerks." "You just rammed into him?" I said to Amos. "I know, right?" laughed Amos. "He didn't even see it coming," said Miles. "He was like, 'Are you a freak too?' And he was like, 'Bam!' said Jack. 'Bam!' said Amos, throwing a fake punch in the air. But after I tackled him, I was like, 'Run, Amos, you schmuck. He's 10 times bigger than you.' And I got up and started running as fast as I could. We all started laughing. I grabbed Augie and I was like, 'Run,' said Henry. "I didn't even know it was you pulling me," I answered. "That was wild," said Amos, shaking his head. "Totally wild." "Your lip is bleeding, dude." "I got in a couple of good punches," answered Amos, wiping his lip. "I think they were 7th graders. They were huge, losers," Henry shouted really loud, but we all shushed him. We listened for a second to make sure no one had heard him. "Where the heck are we?" said Amos. "I can't even see the screen." "I think we're in the cornfield," answered Henry. "Duh, we're in the cornfield," said Miles, pushing a cornstalk at Henry. "Okay, I know exactly where we are," said Amos. "We have to go back in this direction. That'll take us to the other side of the field." "Yo, dudes," said Jack, hand high in the air. "That was really cool of you guys to come back for us. Really cool, thanks." "No problem," answered Amos, high-fiving Jack. And then Miles and Henry high-fived him too. "Yeah, dudes, thanks," I said, holding my palm up like Jack just had, though I wasn't sure if they'd high-five me too. Amos looked at me and nodded. "It was cool how you stood your ground, little dude," he said, high-fiving me. "Yeah, Augie," said Miles, high-fiving me too. "You were like, we're littler than you guys." "I didn't know what else to say," I laughed. "Very cool," said Henry, and he high-fived me too. "Sorry I ripped your sweatshirt." I looked down and my sweatshirt was completely torn down the middle. One sleeve was ripped off and the other was so stretched out it was hanging down to my knees. "Hey, your elbow's bleeding," said Jack. "Yeah," I shrugged. "It was starting to hurt a lot." "You okay?" said Jack, seeing my face. I nodded. Suddenly I felt like crying, and I was trying really hard not to do that. "Wait, your hearing aids are gone," said Jack. "What?" I yelled, touching my ears. The hearing aid band was definitely gone. That's why I felt like I was underwater. "Oh no," I said, and that's when I couldn't hold it in anymore. Everything that had just happened kind of hit me and I couldn't help it. I started to cry, like big crying, what Mom would call the waterworks. I was so embarrassed I hid my face in my arm and I couldn't stop the tears from coming. The guys were totally nice to me though. They patted me on the back. You okay, dude?" "It's okay," they said. "You're one brave little dude, you know that?" said Amos, putting his arm around my shoulder. And when I kept on crying, he put both his hands around me like my dad would have done, and let me cry. The Emperor's Guard. We backtracked through the grass for a good 10 minutes to see if we could find my hearing aids, but it was way too dark to see anything. We literally had to hold on to each other's shirts and walk in single file so we wouldn't trip over one another. It was like black ink had been poured all around. "This is hopeless," said Henry. "They could be anywhere." "Maybe we can come back with a flashlight," answered Amos. "No, it's okay," I said. "Let's just go back. Thanks, though." We walked back towards the cornfields and then cut through them until the back of the giant screen came into view. Since it was facing away from us, we didn't get any light from the screen at all until we'd walk around to the edge of the woods again. That's where we finally started seeing a little light. There was no sign of 7th graders anywhere. Where do you think they went? Said Jack. Back to the food truck, said Amos. They're probably thinking we're going to report them. Are we? Asked Henry. They looked at me. I shook my head. Okay, said Amos, but little dude, don't walk around here alone again, okay? If you need to go somewhere, tell us and we'll go with you. Okay, I nodded. As we got closer to the screen, I could hear high on a hill was a lonely Garthard, and could smell the cotton candy from one of the concession stands near the food trucks. There were lots of kids milling around in this area, so I pulled what was left of my hoodie over my head and kept my face down, hands in my pocket as we made our way through the crowd. It had been a long time since I'd been out without my hearing aids, and it felt like I was miles under the earth. It felt like the song Miranda used to sing to me, ground control to Major Tom, your circuit's dead, there's something wrong. I did notice as I walked that Amos had stayed right next to me, and Jack was close on the other side of me, and Miles was in front of us, and Henry was in back of us. They were surrounding me as we walked through the crowds of kids like I had my own Emperor's Guard. Sleep. Then they came out of the narrow valley, and at once she saw the reason. There stood Peter and Edmund and all of the rest of Aslan's army fighting desperately against the crowd of horrible creatures whom she had seen last night. Only now, in the daylight, they looked even stranger and more evil and more deformed. I stopped there. I'd been reading for over an hour and sleep still didn't come. It was almost 2 a.m. Everyone else was asleep. I had my flashlight on under the sleeping bag, and maybe the light was why I couldn't sleep, but I was too afraid to turn it off. I was afraid of how dark it was outside the sleeping bag. When we got back to our section in front of the movie screen, no one had even noticed we'd been gone. Mr. Tushman and Miss Rubin and Summer and all of the rest of the kids were just watching the movie. They had no clue how something bad had almost happened to me and Jack. It's so weird how that could be, how you could have a night that's the worst in your life, but to everybody else it's just an ordinary night. Like on my calendar at home, I could mark this as being one of the most horrific days of my life, this and the day Daisy died. But for the rest of the world, this was just an ordinary day, or maybe it was even a good day. Maybe somebody won the lottery today. Amos, Miles, and Henry brought me and Jack over to where we'd been sitting before, with Summer and Maya and Reed, and then they went and sat where they were sitting before, with Xiomara and Savannah and their group. In a way, everything was exactly as we left it, before we went looking for the toilets. The sky was the same, the movie was the same, everybody's face was the same, mine was the same. But something was different, something had changed. I could see Amos and Miles and Henry telling their group what had just happened. I knew they were talking about it because they kept looking over at me while we were talking. Even though the movie was still playing, people were whispering around in the dark. News like that spreads fast. It was what everyone was talking about on the bus ride back to the cabins. All the girls, even girls I didn't know very well, were asking me if I was okay. The boys were all talking about getting revenge on the group of 7th grade jerks, trying to figure out what school they were from. I wasn't planning on telling the teachers about any of what had happened, but they found out anyways. Maybe it was the torn sweatshirt and the bloody elbow, or maybe it's just that teachers hear everything. When we got back to camp, Mr. Tushman took me to the first aid office, and while I was getting my elbow cleaned and bandaged up by the camp nurse, Mr. Tushman and the camp director were in the next room talking with Amos and Jack and Henry and Miles, trying to get a description of the troublemakers. When he asked me about them a little later, I said I couldn't remember their faces at all, which wasn't true. It's their faces I kept seeing every time I closed my eyes to sleep. The look of total horror on the girl's face when she first saw me. The way the kid with the flashlight, Eddie, looked at me as he talked to me like he hated me. Like a lamb to the slaughter. I remember Dad saying that ages ago, but tonight I think I finally got what it meant. Aftermath. Mom was waiting for me in front of the school along with all the other parents when the bus arrived. Mr. Tushman told me on the bus ride home that they had called my parents to tell them there had been a situation the night before, but that everyone was fine. He said the camp director and several of the counselors went looking for the hearing aid in the morning while we all went swimming in the lake, but they couldn't find it anywhere. Briarwood would reimburse us the cost of the hearing aid, he said. They felt bad about what happened. I wonder if Eddie had taken my hearing aid with him as a kind of souvenir, something to remember the orc. Mom gave me a tight hug when I got off the bus, but she didn't slam me with questions like I thought she might. Her hug felt good, and I didn't shake it off like some of the other kids were doing with their parents' hugs. The bus driver started unloading our duffel bags, and I went to find mine while Mom talked to Mr. Tushman and Mrs. Rubin, who had walked over to her. As I rolled my bag towards her, a lot of kids who don't usually say anything to me were nodding hello or patting my back as I walked by them. "Ready?" Mom said when she saw me. She took my duffel bag and I didn't even try to hold on to it. I was fine with her carrying it. If she had wanted to carry me on her shoulder, I would have been fine with that too, to be truthful. As we started to walk away, Mr. Tushman gave me a quick, tight hug, but didn't say anything. Home. Mom and I didn't talk much the whole walk home, and when we got to the front stoop, I automatically looked in the front bay window because I forgot for a second that Daisy wasn't going to be there like always, perched on the sofa with her front paws on the windowsill, waiting for us to come home. It made me kind of sad when we walked inside. As soon as we did, Mom dropped my duffel bag and wrapped her arms around me and kissed me on my head and on my face like she was breathing me in. "It's okay, Mom. I'm fine," I said, smiling. She nodded and took my face in her hands. Her eyes were shiny. "I know you are," she said. "I missed you so much, Augie. I missed you too." I could tell she wanted to say a lot of things, but she was stopping herself. "Are you hungry?" she said. "Starving. Can I have a grilled cheese?" "Of course," she answered, and immediately started to make the sandwich while I took my jacket off and sat at the kitchen counter. "Where's Via?" I asked. "She's coming home with Dad today. Boy, did she miss you, Augie," Mom said. "Yeah, she would have liked the nature reserve. You know what movie they played? The Sound of Music." "You'll have to tell her that. So, do you want to hear about the bad part or the good part first?" I asked after a few minutes, leaning my head on my hand. "Whatever you want to talk about," she answered. "Well, except for last night, I had an awesome time," I said. "I mean, it was just awesome. That's why I'm so bummed. I feel like they ruined the whole trip for me." "No, sweetie, don't let them do that to you. You were there for more than 48 hours, and that awful part lasted 1 hour. Don't let them take that away from you, okay?" "I know," I nodded. "Did Mr. Tushman tell you about the hearing aids?" "Yeah, he called us this morning." "Was Dad mad because they're so expensive?" "Oh my gosh, of course not, Augie. He just wanted to know that you were all right. That's all that matters to us. And that you don't let those thugs ruin your trip." I kind of laughed at the way she said the word thugs. "What?" she asked. "Thugs," I teased her. "That's kind of an old-fashioned word." "Okay, jerks, morons, imbeciles," she said, flipping over the sandwich in the pan. "Cretinos," as my mother would have said. Whatever you want to call them. If I saw them on the street, I would. She shook her head. They were pretty big, Mom, I smiled. 7th graders, I think. She shook her head. 7th graders? Mr. Tushman didn't tell us that. Oh my goodness. Did he tell you how Jack stood up for me? I said, and almost was like bam. He rammed right into the leader. They both crashed to the ground like a real fight. It was pretty awesome. Amos's lip was bleeding and everything. He told us there was a fight, but, she said, looking at me with her eyebrow raised, I'm just so grateful you and Amos and Jack are fine. When I think about what could have happened, she trailed off, flipping the grilled cheese again. My Montauk hoodie got totally shredded. Well, that can be replaced, she answered. She lifted the grilled cheese onto a plate and put the plate in front of me on the counter. Milk or white grape juice? Chocolate milk, please. I started devouring the sandwich. Oh, can you do it that special way you make it, with the froth? How did you and Jack end up at the edge of the woods in the first place? She said, pouring the milk into a tall glass. Jack had to go to the bathroom, I answered, my mouth full. As I was talking, she spooned in the chocolate powder and started rolling a small whisk between her palms really fast. But there was a huge line and he didn't want to wait, so we just went towards the woods to pee. She looked up at me while she was whisking. I know she was thinking, we shouldn't have done that. The chocolate milk in the glass now had 2-inch froth on top. That's good, Mom, thanks. And then what happened? She said, putting the glass in front of me. I took a long drink of chocolate milk. It is okay if we don't talk about it anymore right now. Oh, okay. I promise I'll tell you about it later, when Dad and Via come home. I'll tell you every detail. I just don't want to have to tell the whole story over and over, you know? Absolutely. I finished my sandwich in 2 more bites and gulped down the chocolate milk. Wow, you practically inhaled that sandwich. Do you want another one? She said. I shook my head and wiped my mouth with the back of my hand. Mom, am I always going to have to worry about jerks like that? I asked. Like when I grow up, is it always going to be like this? She didn't answer right away, but took my plate and glass and put them in the sink and rinsed them with water. There are always going to be jerks in the world, Augie, she said, looking at me. But I really believe, and Daddy really believes, that there are more good people on earth than bad people. And the good people watch out for each other and take care of each other, just like Jack was there for you and Amos and those other kids. Oh yeah, Miles and Henry, I answered. They were awesome too. It's weird because Miles and Henry haven't even really been very nice to me at all during the year. Sometimes people surprise us, she said, rubbing the top of my head. I guess. Want another glass of chocolate milk? No, I'm good, I said. Thanks, Mom. Actually, I'm kind of tired. I didn't sleep too good last night. You should take a nap. Thanks for leaving me Babu. By the way, you got my note? She smiled. I slept with him both nights. She was about to say something else when her cell phone rang and she answered. She started beaming as she listened. Oh my goodness, really? What kind? She said excitedly. Yep, he's right here. He was about to take a nap. Want to say hi? Oh, okay. See you in 2 minutes. She clicked it off. That was Daddy, she said excitedly. He and Via are just down the block. He's not at work, I said. He left early because he couldn't wait to see you, she said. So don't take a nap quite yet. 5 seconds later, Dad and Via came through the door. I ran into Dad's arms and he picked me up and spun me around and kissed me. He didn't let me go for a few minutes until I said, Dad, it's okay. And then it was Via's turn and she kissed me all over like she used to do when I was little. It wasn't until she stopped that I noticed the big white cardboard box they had brought in with them. What is that? I said. Open it, said Dad, smiling, and he and Mom looked at each other like they knew a secret. Come on, Augie, said Via. I opened the box. Inside was the cutest puppy I've ever seen in my life. It was black and furry with a pointy little snout and bright black eyes and small ears that flopped down.